invitation. I was about to say that my talk would be something like an excursus compared to the typical talk. So in that sense, it would fit quite well the topic of the workshop. But maybe after thinking a bit more about it, there can be some tighter connection, and I hope that by the end of the talk, you will be convinced about it. So let me start by the summary, by the end, somehow. Let's assume that I consider a bunch of confined molecules, the dilute gas here, confined in this harmonic well. And I want to go from this state at a given temperature and spatial extent to another state that is, let's say, much cooler, but let's say more extended in space. What I can do is just slowly open the trap. So I slowly decrease the curvature. And if I am patient enough, this will simply work. And I will have achieved the following transformation in phase space from this circular-like blob in some units into this sugar shape, with thus the small temperature here. Well, what I will present is a way to shortcut this long process, this highly improbable process, if you would like this to happen naturally, through a series of carefully chosen intermediate confining potential, in which, in particular, you can notice that the curvature has changed sign, so I need some intermediate steps that will be anti-confining. This is basically what you have to remember from what I will discuss. So it has to be clear from the outset that what I will discuss today implies the word adiabatic in the quantum mechanical sense, okay, just slow enough. So I'd like to turn a slow process into a fast one. And the framework for doing this will be kinetic theory, which is particularly relevant for a dilute gas, say, of cold atoms. But there might be other settings where this could be relevant. So let me say start by a few words concerning the Boltzmann equation. Something like 140 years after its derivation, it has kept the very essence of its initial formulation. It has kept its interest, I would say, and its predictive power. There are a number of domains in which this is relevant, and one of those is space aerodynamics. It's also quite interesting that it went from a leap of faith in the 19th century to now a solid branch of mathematics. And this little stamp here is to remind that it owes a great deal, well, not only to the guy on the right-hand side, but also to Maxwell. So it is nevertheless one of the great triumphs of Boltzmann to have derived the so-called H theorem, which I will recap quite loosely. Let me introduce the velocity PDF, so the probability density for finding a molecule at a point R with velocity v at time t. So let me just normalize this to unity, like this. So Boltzmann considered this H functional of the PDF, and he showed that H is a monotonously decreasing function of time. And seeing this as a forerunner of Shannon entropy, this is not particularly surprising to us. So what was important is that it endowed the time with an arrow, and thereby connected microscopic dynamics to macroscopic irreversibility. What is more important for my purpose is that at long times, it implies that the logarithm of the PDF is a collisional invariant. It's conserved in here what are going to be binary collisions. And this means that as such, it should exhaust all the conserved quantities in the collision. And there are three types of such quantities. Well, let's say unity, just saying that the number of particles is conserved in a collision. Momentum, but I'm going to consider like mass particles, so just velocity here is relevant. And kinetic energy. So it says that if you wait long enough, and maybe I should write this formula because it introduces the basic quantity which I am going to work with. If you wait long enough, then the system evolves to a Gaussian-like distribution. So F will be written as it's even equal to the exponential of this alpha function, which may depend on space and time, plus gamma, which itself may depend on space and time dot velocity plus beta, well, which can also depend on space and times velocity squared. Well, I should put some minus for consistency, otherwise everybody is going to be confused. So I will refer to beta as the inverse temperature. So it has a very clear and well-defined kinetic meaning, but of course no thermodynamic existence. So the framework, since we consider a low-density gas, is allows to simplify in quite a great deal the n-body UV-lag dynamics into a one-body dynamics through the Boltzmann equation, according to which the velocity PDF evolves under the action of the free streaming operator. So here I have an external force which acts onto the molecules, and I assume this force to derive from a potential V. And on the right-hand side, what I do not write is the collisional operator. And what is quite interesting is that I will never need to write it explicitly. Actually, what I'm going to state is completely independent from what is there. So it's quite generic. And then the H theorem, if you push this to the limits where essentially this becomes spatial and temporal and time independent, just says that the system goes to equilibrium at an inverse temperature, which is actually half of this beta, of this 1 over beta. Well, so what? Why such an introduction to relaxation to equilibrium? Well, because actually, Boltzmann himself realized that for some special external potentials, then equilibrium is not reached. It's never reached, actually. And, well, this is not so well known, actually. It was even considered as some uninteresting curiosity by the specialists. So I just like to quote these sentences from George Uhlenbeck, just recapitulating the thing. So for some special outside potentials, okay, this equilibrium will not be reached in time. So basically, this is only of limited interest. Well, what Uhlenbeck and I think Boltzmann did not know is that actually the statement can be enlarged, and it happens that there are also non-harmonic external potential which do admit solutions which never relax to equilibrium. This is one first statement, and quite surprisingly, nobody has seen it, including in the most mathematically oriented books, like this one by Ciarcigliani, which is like the Bible in kinetic theory for quite a lot of us. But what is much more interesting is that those solutions, they can be generalized to time-dependent confinement. And this is actually where the focus of the talk will be today. The interest of this is that it opens the way to a reverse engineering viewpoint. And I will explain what I mean here by reverse. Let's say that the direct approach is that I take an external confinement, which is static. I have a given harmonic trap. And then it may happen that there are time-dependent solutions, the ones which Boltzmann found, which the system never relaxes, fine, but it's a direct view. What I will try to ask as a question is to say, assuming I want a given time evolution for my solution, does there exist an external potential which admits those solutions as, well, as the typical ones, as just the Boltzmann equation solution?
Excuse me, can you elaborate what you mean by non-relaxing?
Yes, I hope it will become clear in a moment. I will. So if I can achieve this, then I will have answered the shortcut to a adiabaticity question. Like I will be able to connect two equilibrium states by a route which can be as short as I want, assuming I am able to, well, tailor properly the external potential. So to answer your question, what do these solutions look like? So I start by the direct view. So I confine the molecules in an external static harmonic, well, let's say, so far not yet harmonic, in some external potential. And it happens that, okay, this H theorem requirement, which imposes the PDF to be of this form, actually, as I mentioned, does not tell you that alpha, beta, and gamma are constant in space and time. So they can be both space and time dependent. And actually they are for the special class of external potential I mentioned, which means that alpha, beta, and gamma are oscillating functions. So it happens that there is a sort of a perpetual conversion of kinetic into potential energy. So you have to envision the cloud of atoms confined as breathing. It's like a monopole. And when it is, let's say, of small spatial extent, it is very hot, and it cools as it expands, and so on and so forth. So those solutions, they are not limited to small oscillations. And the way to derive them is extremely simple, actually, because we consider this as a starting point. I mean, it's, again, the H-theorem requirement, which means that at long time, the solutions have to be of this form. We know that they are in the kernel of the collisional integral. Or you can just check it immediately. This only depends on the conservation laws. And since momentum and energy is conserved upon collision, then I know that this completely nullifies that term here. So then it becomes a very simple problem. I just have to make sure that the free streaming operator acting on F yields 0. So you see that you have some V term here, for instance, a V squared there. So you will get the polynomial in velocity of degree 3, which will emerge from that. And then you have order by order to make sure that every contribution is vanishing. So you get 4 conditions, which are written here. The first one is that this inverse temperature should be position independent. So it's only a function of time. And then for the other one, it's a bit more complicated. But it's easy to realize that there is one term which plays a special role, which is the gamma term here, which, and this is quite obvious from the formula, which couples actually velocity to position. And if you don't have this gamma term, then you completely lose the interest of those solutions. For instance, it means then that this precursor of the external potential becomes time independent. It then also means that this term drops, so the temperature is not only R independent, but also time independent, and basically you're back to equilibrium with a constant temperature and alpha corresponding to, the gradient of the potential, simply. All right. Let's try to solve for the equations. So this is quite simple. Beta is only a function of time. Then addressing this one, it's quite simple to get the general solution, which happens to be of this form. So this coupling term is some uninteresting shift, which I can get rid of quite easily. Some antisymmetric term, which is connected to, let's say, the fact that there might be some angular momentum in the system, okay, which is quite non-trivial, because since, let's say, the moment of inertia is changing, it means that it's going to rotate at a variable frequency, but let me get rid of this for a while. And then gamma is, more interestingly, connected to beta dot times position. Then I can massage the equations and end up with this. And this implies, two constraints. The first is that there are only some special external potentials that are compatible with this requirement. And they are of that form. So one recovers the harmonic confinement. But there is something else, which is a bit bizarre, which happens to be in the kernel of that operator, actually, and which Boltzmann missed somehow, and all followers, for a reason I do not know, but it's really a valid solution. It's normalizable, it's anything, although it's divergent at the origin, but okay, why not? So this being said, let me now forget about this, because it's more curiosity than something extremely deep. And the second thing is that this being taken for granted now, it implies a differential equation for the inverse temperature, which has this simple form, and which tells you that beta dot, or the temperature itself, oscillates at a frequency 2 omega. Not omega, the confining frequency, but twice this value. Yes?
Do I understand correctly that this comes about because you enforce uniformity for the solution?
In which sense uniformity?
Because you enforce the validity of the Gaussian form
Yes,
is
yes.
uniform in R.
Yeah.
Of course, there is a solution which is not uniform in R.
There are certainly many others. This is one special solution indeed.
But so if you say there is no solution or there is no relaxation, that is understood in a very special way.
No, I mean, no interesting solution. There is always equilibrium as a solution.
Yes.
You see, actually, if beta is time independent, then you get 0. So this includes the trivial unknown solutions.
So the solution you described, will it be stable?
That's a good question, which I'd like to address in a moment. Yeah. Okay, so this is just to put some more numbers into this breathing phenomenon, which I mentioned a little while ago. So the fact that beta oscillates is also a property shared by alpha and gamma. And of course, maybe one has to notice that the differential equation acts on beta dot and not on beta, because again, equilibrium has to be there.
Alpha depends on R also.
On?
R.
Yes, sure. The only expression which is R independent is the inverse temperature. So actually, the most general form is this. And here I can simplify a little bit, because what is most interesting in that object is that it's actually linear in distance.
So another natural question. Is the entropy constant in this solution?
No. But okay, if you want to define entropy, now it's a.
I mean the H function.
Okay, now if it is the H function, which is not the entropy, because we have an interacting system, okay, and the point is that the H functional does not apply actually as a functional, as a non-equilibrium entropy to the systems I consider, because they are interacting. But anyway, the H functional now, it is indeed constant.
So how are they interacting now?
So they can have any sort of scattering law.
But it's a dilute gas.
So this is a strong assumption, yes. It's a dilute gas, otherwise it doesn't work.
So why would there not be an H theory for a
No, there is, let's say. But, okay. So there is, at first stages, it does evolve in time, and then I am very far from those solutions if I start from a random initial condition. And then I am on those solutions which make that the H is constant. So to answer this question, now this class of solution is indeed making H T independent, but still oscillating. So. Okay, so now let me address the reverse route. So I consider an external confining of this form, but now it's time dependent. I can repeat the analysis. It's extremely simple, and I end up with a differential equation that is almost the same as before, but now there is just an extra term, which is omega dot dependent, and there is, well, it's no more complicated than that. So, what can we do with this? Well, have in mind this shortcut to adiabaticity problem. So this is what I'm going to concentrate on. So then, how should omega of t be tailored so that we can achieve a given target and a priori chosen evolution? And in particular, now I'd like to restrict further the goal and to connect two equilibrium states. So as I mentioned in the introduction, if you do it, let's say, adiabatically, you have to make sure that the evolution over which omega changes is much bigger than the inverse omega, and also than the relocation time of the system, which depends on the scattering law which I have chosen, and which I do not specify. Then it's possible to shortcut the strong weighting. In other words, I will take two equilibrium states, the initial one and the final one. They have to be connected by some adiabatic invariant. Okay? So I consider two states for which there exists an adiabatic transformation in between, which means that the ratio T over omega in the initial and final states have to be equal. Right? This is what would naturally emerge if I was doing the solution, the transformation extremely slowly. Then, as written earlier, this is the key equation to consider. And one first check for the consistency of the approach is to make sure that I recover the adiabatic invariance if the transformation is slow enough. So if it is the case, then the high order derivatives can be dropped from the equation. This is what I have to work with. And if you simplify by omega, you see that you end up with omega beta dot plus omega dot times beta equal to 0. So the product omega times beta is indeed conserved, and it has to be. So it's good to see that this requirement is fulfilled. So now, I'd like to achieve a fast compression or fast expansion of the cloud of atoms or molecules. So I will choose a given evolution for the temperature or for its inverse. I just choose this object here. And then I will infer how omega of t has to be so that this equation is obeyed. So more precisely, since it is a third order equation, and I need to connect two equilibrium states in which those quantities do vanish because they are constant, then I need to match the derivatives. I will have the first three derivatives, which makes 4 conditions, because also the value of the temperature in the initial and final states is prescribed. So I have 8 conditions to fulfill. So I can choose a polynomial of degree 7 to match both. And this is how it looks like. It's the only polynomial of degree 7 which does the job here of having the proper values of temperature on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, with vanishing first, second, and third derivatives in the initial and final points. Notice that I choose the time for making the transformation, and this can be as short as I wish. Okay? I just know that if I send this to infinity, I have to recover the adiabatic transformation. Otherwise, it can be as short as desired. So the solutions look like this. If the evolution is extremely slow, actually t and omega are essentially equal, as they should be. It's the adiabatic invariance, except that here I plot omega squared for a reason that is going to become clear in a moment. What has been chosen here is that the cloud is 5-fold decompressed, which means also that the temperature is going to decrease by a factor of 5. Which is what you see here. Starting from unity, it goes to 0.2. If I do the transformation, let's say, on the other hand, extremely fast, then it happens generically that omega squared, which is plotted here, is negative in a finite time window, which means that transiently the trap has to be expulsive, and this makes a lot of sense actually, because you are perturbing the system so much from where it started from, and you want it in a very small time to be in a much more extended configuration, so you have to kick them hard to make sure that they are going to reach their final equilibrium position. So this is what this is about. And there is a critical case, some particular value of the time for the transformation, such that you exactly hit 0 for omega squared. Well, you can formulate it in quantum way. Anyway, now the question about the stability somehow is rephrased here. Well, does it work? Because it seems somehow too good to be true. What was bothering me for quite some time was that we played with that very simple functional form, which is then a long time statement in magnetic theory. Then how can it work for such fast transformations? Well, of course, the solutions we do have, they are true mathematical solutions to the Boltzmann equation. I think they are assuming sufficient regularity and so on. It's none of my business, really. It's a valid solution, but it's not so clear that it's a stable solution. So to check that, we have performed direct simulation Monte Carlo simulations, which are of much use in a number of contexts, to study granular gas physics or in the context of higher dynamics. And in particular, it is the method which was used to investigate the cerebral crash of the Columbia shuttle some more than 10 years ago. It just amounts to solving, let's say, exactly the Boltzmann equation. So it's a particle method to solve the Boltzmann equation in an exact way if you put enough particles in your fake dynamics. So I repeat the roadmap. I choose a given target evolution for temperature. Once I have done this, I solve the equation, and I infer, and this can be done analytically because it's just a first order differential equation on omega. I compute what's the omega of t needed to achieve that target evolution. It looks like this, fairly simple. So then I am going to confine, in this numerical technique, to confine my atoms in a trap that has this external confinement time dependence. And I'm going to measure everything that can be measured, including temperature, and see if it obeys, if I recover the target evolution. Of course, one very strong statement of those solutions is that the temperature is space independent. So this has to be checked. So you have to compute locally the variance of the velocity PDF and make sure that it is R independent. So it's a first strong check that the solutions do mean something. Well, this is fulfilled. Let me show you now some numerical results. We started by choosing, let's say, a long time for making the transformation. And then we plot here, there's a non-adiabaticity index. If you plot the ratio of t over omega, then if you are extremely slow, asymptotically slow, it should stay at unity in the whole time window. So here we are not too far from this. And in other words, let's say the ratio of temperature over the initial value and same thing for omega are more or less superimposed. And basically they do follow the target, but it's not a severe test. Let's do it a bit faster. You see now that the non-adiabaticity index is a bit more, well, deviant from unity by 20%. The symbols show the temperature which is measured in the simulation, anywhere in the box actually, so by the local variance of the dusty PDF, and it very closely follows the predicted, well, degree 7 polynomial for the temperature. And on the other hand, this other line here, which is distinct, is the omega timeline. Now let's do it even faster. Now there is a very severe mismatch between omega and the predicted temperature. The adiabaticity index raised actually is almost divergent because we are very close to the critical time here. And still you see that there is an excellent agreement between the symbols and
time?
sorry?
What's the critical time?
So it corresponds to this intermediate situation here where omega squared hits 0 at a specific time value. So you know that there is a well-defined time in units of the initial confinement time. It's the only relevant time scale in the problem. So if I choose this at this value, I know that and the simulations were done maybe at a little bit above, maybe 3.99, something like this. Well, so just to say that it works quite well. The solutions are also endowed with a nice scaling property. You have to be a bit careful how to rescale the variables because actually what matters is not a direct rescaling of velocity, but you have to rescale velocity in the center of mass frame, which is this extra contribution here. But once you do so, then you can completely write this time-dependent solution into a, let's say, universal function. Well, this is basically what I wanted to say. Among the interesting perspectives, I think it would be interesting to introduce some optimality criterion. Let's say some energy cost, for instance, by embedding the setup into some external apparatus that is making the transformation, and we'd like to find a temperature protocol that will be, let's say, not chosen arbitrarily as we did, but that will minimize the cost of the whole process, for instance, or whatever cost you would like to introduce. But maybe I should have emphasized more that I can choose any target temperature versus time which I want. So there is no reason that it wouldn't work for other functions. So it's extremely versatile as a method. It will only affect the omega squared of t, which I will compute from that. Then also knowing what the effect of noise seems to be quite interesting. And what I don't know is what will remain from this physics when, let's say, density corrections will be included. What beyond the Boltzmann equation physics, what is going to survive? Is it going to survive in a transient time window, and then we are going to lose these nice properties and then relax to equilibrium? Well, it's a plausible scenario. And finally, what is also of quite some interest would be to have some experiments that would realize all this. And having thanked my collaborators from David Guerrero from Toulouse, Alexei Shipeliowski from Orsay, Ron Gonzalo Muga from Bilbao, and Maria José Ruiz Montero from Sevilla, I leave you with Nestor, who summarizes quite well what these 4 shortcuts are. Let's say from equilibrium to another equilibrium state in a short time window through a series of highly non-adiabatic states, because you can see that the poor Nestor is sweating quite a lot in between. So thanks for your attention.